दक्षिणास्य समारंभा शंकराचार्य मध्यमा अस्मदाचार्य पर्यंता स्मर्या गुरुपरंपरा श्रुति पुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शंकरं लोकशंकरं शंकरं शंकराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। परिज्ञानाश्रम श्री गुरुशंकर परिज्ञानाश्रम शंकर सद्गुरु केशव वामन कृष्ण पांडुरंग आनंद परिज्ञान गुरु सद्यो जात शंकर सद्गुरु गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ओम सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय शंकर। I now request Shri Mahesh Kalyanpur Ma'am to deliver the welcome address.
Jai Shankar. On behalf of the Canara Saraswat Association, Managing Committee members and the President and the Vice President of Canara Saraswat Association, I welcome Rajesh and entire audience for this session of Mulaqat. Canara Saraswat Association I will just give a brief background of KSA and the activities. KSA was established on 26 November 1911, and there are many activities which are being carried out by KSA. One of the main activity of KSA is the publication of the monthly Canara Saraswat magazine, which has become very widely accepted globally, and the members as well as the family members of all the KSA members are eagerly looking forward for reading interesting articles from the magazine. Recently, we have also started publishing one article from KSA-CSN member on their experiences, how they have. These are basically knowledge sharing articles. KSA has their own its own website, and where presently this is being streamed also live. We have a holiday home in Nasik, which is presently under a part of the holiday home is presently under renovation, and you will get a new look with the holiday home. We also have a health center in the Talmukiwadi premises, which provides consultation at very reasonable rates. We have also a marriage bureau, which maintains a database of all the eligible boys and girls from the community. The marriage bureau had recently organized first Amchi Melawa, which had a very good response. Apart from these, we have KSA also has sports and organizes sports and social activities. Recently, we had a senior citizen get together. This event was started a few years back, and the response here also has been very good. We also have regular Sangeet Sammelans and conventions. The business convention actually in 1961, the first business convention was held, and again in 1969 and in 70, a youth convention was held. Thereafter, in 2015, KSA launched a KSA-CSN initiative, basically motivate youngsters to set up their own businesses and also have a good gel between the Amchi entrepreneurs. So, and apart from these activities, the major activity of KSA is helping the needy in the community. So we have set up corpus funds, which include a scholarship fund, distress relief, medical relief, emergency medical. During the COVID, we had set up a COVID relief fund, and through all these reliefs, we help the needy in the community. Through most of these funds are released through uh, the uh, we have a coordination committee of aid giving institutions. So, but most of these are dispersed through the recommendations of these. But during the year, I think we annually disburse around 30 lakhs of funds to the needy within the community. So I look forward to all the uh, viewers on this on the platform. To one is my appeal to all the viewers who are not members, please become members of KSA so that this membership also grows. You can involve yourself in the activities of KSA and help the community, the needy in the community, also uh, benefit in the long run. Everyone will benefit in the long run. So, with these words, I would request Gautam Mam to pitch in now on the KSA-CSN. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahesh Ma'am. Jai Shankar, everybody. With the blessings of our Sadguru Param Pujya Srimad Sadguru Shankar Ashram Swamiji, KSA-CSN was relaunched in a way on the auspicious day of Guru Purnima in 2019 at Mulaqat, with the inauguration of the KSA-CSN website in the divine presence of Swamiji by our President Praveen Kadle Ma'am. CSN was formally adopted as one of its objectives by KSA and has been actively supported by the managing committee, our President Shri Praveen Kadle, and most of all, our most active and strongest supporter, Shri Kishore Masurkar, who is our current Vice President. Our inspiration comes from a famous quote by Robert Kiyosaki, who is an American business person and an author, who says the richest people in the world look for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. So KSA-CSN provides the network and the platform for Bhanap, that is Chitrapur Saraswat, business owners and self-employed professionals to come together, bond, get to know each other's personally and each other's business, and the business goals, dreams, and work towards finding the best feasible solution and mutual help that the owners could offer each other. KSA-CSN encourages members to educate fellow members rather than selling to fellow members, because once your informal marketing network knows about your business more, the better it can help your cause by referring you to the connects that they know. Apart from various networking initiatives like entrepreneur club meets, where twice in a month entrepreneurs meet and exchange information about each other, share connects, and various other things. One-on-ones where two members sit across the table. We also circulate our Bhanap yellow pages, an idea which was conceptualized by our Vice President Kishore Ma'am. This is a compilation of information of the CSN database, and whoever has registered their information there would automatically get included in the yellow pages. And the same is circulated through various social media options that are available, WhatsApp, Facebook, and other things. So our motto is other things being fairly equal. Other things being fairly equal, prefer a Bhanap. And one up for Bhanap is our tagline in a way. That's what we work towards. Interactions between mutual interactions between Bhanap business owners. We have had two introductory meets, one in Bangalore in February, I mean, in Mumbai in February, and one in Bangalore and Mangalore in April. And the response has been fairly good, very good in fact from Bangalore. It's been good in Mumbai because CSN started has its roots in Mumbai. And the people, Bhanaps have reported business of almost 25 to 30 lakhs in the financial year ended March 23. And in the last 2 months, I think 2 to 3 lakhs of reported business has been uh, informed to us. There is a lot of business which goes unannounced, but we are trying to get over that issue so that we know the actual success status of CSN. So happy networking. What Bhanaps can do for us is what I'll. There's a screen which is shared. First is is the screen visible?
Why not?
Register on the KSA-CSN database, which is at www.canarasaraswat.com/CSN. We'll try and display the slide again at the end of the program. Participate in CSN activities and contribute your might to CSN activity, which is one step ahead of participation, that is volunteering. And finally, the end goal, prosper ourselves and help prosper others. I thank you. That's all for the introduction, and I'll now go to the main part of the program. The first step of the main program, that is introduction of the chief guest, speaker, and the person and our interviewer. Over to Rajan Kalyanpur. Thank you. Rajan,
Yeah, thank you, Gautam. Can I be heard? Am I audible?
Yes.
yes, very much, very much.
Thank you, Gautam. Friends, on behalf of KSA, I consider it a great pleasure to introduce our chief guest at today's Mulaqat session, Shri Rajesh Mirjankar. An engineering graduate in electronics and communication from SDM College of Engineering, Dharwad, Rajesh commenced his career as a lecturer and later joined a startup, B&K IT, in 1995. He was elevated to the position of co-founder in 2001 when there was a management reshuffle and the company was rebranded as Infrasoft Technologies Limited, offering digital solutions to the banking and financial sector. He was based in UK for close to 10 years, building the firm's services and also innovating new products. Today, Rajesh is the co-founder, managing director, and CEO of Kia.ai, a leading digital solutions provider that serves over 550 banks, financial institutions, and governments globally across 56 countries. The AI in the name suggests the application of artificial intelligence for providing the digital solutions. He has a career spanning 30 years dedicated to banking technology. Rajesh has steered Kia.ai to become a leading solutions provider of artificial intelligence-based omni-channel solutions, core banking, reg tech, and digital payments, in addition to its new age technologies such as metaverse and Web3, intelligent automation, artificial intelligence, data analytics, and conversational user interface. Kia.ai recently launched Bharat Meta, India's first metaverse that offers meaningful applications for banking, real estate, learning, commerce, and culture. I understand that Bharat Meta was showcased at the recent Viva Tech in Paris, Europe's biggest startup and tech event. Rajesh, born in 1970 to Dr. Satish and Srimati Anupama Mirjankar, grew up in Hubli. Rajesh is married to Jyoti from the Narkarni family of Gokarn, and they are blessed with a son Anant, who is pursuing his education in the United Kingdom. Jyoti is a chef with diploma in culinary craft and baking from South Bank University, UK, and now pursuing business in health foods. She is also a numerologist. Rajesh has a sister, Rupa, who lives with her husband, Shri Sandeep Gore, in Bengaluru. In conversation with Rajesh, our chief guest today at the Mulaqat session is Rajiv Kalyanpur. Rajiv needs no introduction to most of us in the Bhanap community. A highly successful second-generation entrepreneur, Rajiv is blessed with running the family business Acme, again a name familiar to many Bhanaps, founded by his Bhantu, the late Shri Raghuveer Gopalrao Kalyanpur. Beginning with the manufacture of soaps, Acme today is primarily involved in the manufacture of specialty oleochemicals, and over 80% of the turnover is through exports. Rajiv, incidentally, is the co-founder of the KSA-CSN initiative and the man who started the Mulaqat concept. Under his initiative, satisfying his passion to understand and learn from the success stories of high achievers. I am sure the Mulaqat session today will enrich the knowledge base of the audience and particularly help the youth and the younger generation identify and encash the sea of opportunities that technologies like AI or artificial intelligence, metaverse, etc. offer. Needless to add that KSA will be more than happy to play the facilitator role under the KSA-CSN platform wherever possible, and does look forward to many high-tech Bhanap startups being founded in the near future. I now hand over to Rajiv to proceed with the Mulaqat. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Rajan Ma'am, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Rajesh, for being here with us today. I look forward to a very knowledge-enhancing session because some of the things that you're doing are quite new to us. So thank you for being with us today. Can you, give us an overview of your life's journey, and how you got into software and eventually leading to the establishing of Kia? And can you share your story with us?
First of all, Jai Shankar to everyone, and thank you for this opportunity by KSA-CSN to interact with the community. I started my career as normally one would to really take up a job. So I'm not somebody who was either born with a silver spoon or in an entrepreneurial family per se, or things such as that. What I've done is, what anyone would do after graduation and move on. So I think just to summarize that, I did my engineering in SDM CET Dharwad, and at that point in time, before I could think what I want to do next, I went on to teach as a lecturer for a year. And that was a very enriching experience from the fact that the interaction with students, being able to lecture just a year after I graduated was an amazing experience from an ability to build strengths in communication, collaboration, and being able to reach out to people to understand what they need and to communicate what I want to express. So that really did a lot of value add. But a year down the line after teaching, I decided to move on to new shores. And that is when I moved on to Mumbai. And in that period, took up a job. So, there's a good value add in terms of how things really came about. When I decided to move to Mumbai, the huge contribution of my growth has come from the family per se. There are so many people I always thank, but I think the whole fact is that as Bhanaps, we tend to be very family oriented as we start off. And those are the value systems that the children inculcate. And that is what we pass on to our children. It's moved on. And I think I have been a core beneficiary of that aspect. When I moved on to Mumbai, I had support from Mr. Ashok Dhareshwar and Shamla Dhareshwar. So Shamla Dhareshwar is the younger sister of my father. I moved to their home and just announced that, I'm here looking for a job and I've come here to stay. I was most welcomed by them, and my cousin Ashwin, we were of the same age. So when I went on looking for a job, I got the support from another family member, my uncle Chetan Mirjankar, his wife, or my kaki, Mangala Mirjankar. Her uncle introduced me to someone in the industry, and that's how I landed up with my first job. Why I mention this is because, the connection of families really moves on, and how you grow up and then where all you get those resources are just, I would say, miracles don't happen by themselves. Miracle happen because of what you do, what you have as a network. And throughout, I had the support of whether it was my father's side or my mother's brothers. There was a lot of support from there, and in terms of coming up to that point. Anyways, I landed up with my first job, and when I moved to managing banking software, the first project that I managed was the pilot implementation of branch networking in India. So this was Reserve Bank of India's pilot project, and I was privileged to be a part of this. This was Bank of India where it first started. After about a couple of months in Mumbai, I moved on to Bangalore, which is where I got to interact with a lot of other banks and headed up the South Zone. Pretty much in about a year's time, I had understood the whole business of banking. I had done my engineering, so it was a perfect blend of technology and domain. And I was having the right sort of skills now to move on to the next level. A very different thing happened in terms of, the value of education as well. And this is something as a lesson I do talk to youngsters when I do a career guidance. I say, pay attention in class. There was a Japanese company that was bidding for a software for India's first inter-branch networking software in a large bank. And I happened to be there as a support engineer, just hearing that there are some Japanese out there. And the first thing that came to my mind is, are these guys replacing us? What is happening? Let me just see. And when I went there, I realized that they put a food committee to discuss how they want to go about this. So the next day, I just went to the head of IT and said, we also can do this. And mind you, I should be honest, I really didn't know what we need to do, but I said we could do this. So he said, yeah, come and present to the committee tomorrow. The next day, I went up there, and all I knew about networking was actually the 7 layers of OSI network, which I learned in my engineering in a book called Computer Networks of Tenenbaum. I put the diagram on the PowerPoint, put that diagram up there, and being a lecturer of the same subject, I explained that entire concept. Then brought in a bit of banking. The fact that I paid attention in class and the fact that I then taught the same subject brought me to the point that it really was a turning point of my career. This landed the biggest deal in the company. And as I took up that project, I then got a phone call that, the partners with whom, the company that I was associated with, the partners there had decided to form another company. My core mentor there was Hanuman Tripathi. He was heading marketing, but then he went on to create BNKIT as a startup. This was one of India's first sweat equity companies. Because people knew sweat at that time, but people did not know how to part with equity as investors. I remember only that at that point in time, probably Amitabh Bachchan Corporation Limited was the other sweat equity company.
Okay.
The rest of it was all people who brought in money and to raise equity as such. So that was 1995. We formed the business together. The 4 founders. I was not the original founder of the business per se. I was employee number 6. But this was the roles being played by everyone together, right? So Hanuman Tripathi led that entire team, and that's how BNKIT was formed. Our focus was completely banking software. And the choice at that time, each of us had at careers, was to really go to the US and take up software development jobs and things such as that. And what we decided is that, we've got to do something for the Indian economy. We've got to work with banks in India and see where we can take off from where we left in terms of branch automation. That's how my career started in BNKIT, and I ended up developing several other products along with the teams and the management in terms of, in those days, it was India's first fax on demand. where somebody could put a fax and receive a statement by fax. It was first statement that could come on a computer. So corporate client could download their entire banking statement on a computer. This was not the age of internet, mind you. This was where you had to do modem to modem communication and get through. So those were interesting aspects. And pretty much after that, in 2001, there was one of the founders of the business left. And that is when the investors all came together and elevated me to the status of a founder, because, employee number 6 to the 4 founders was almost as close. And I was, managing a large part of the company's business at that time. So I took up the role of as a co-founder, worked in UK and built up the company's services business. And that's how really the entrepreneurial journey started as such.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you've already shared with us the help you received from your uncles and all that. But Amgal community, Chitrapur Saraswats, we are not really known to be a business community, right? And you are a first generation entrepreneur, which is very admirable. But what was the reaction of your parents and Jyoti, and how did they view your being in entrepreneurship with all its potential risks? So what has been their thought process, and what kind of support and views did you get from them?
So, like I said, family has been a big support, and my father has been a role model for me. And how my mother supported my father was the next aspect of saying, what is a role model? A role model is not by themselves. It is somebody who becomes one by the assistance of what you say, the ecosystem. And my father did a lot of work around social impact. As a doctor, he used to offer free services to people, and he worked for 3 years in Kumta, in a remote areas, what was compared to Hubli as we grew up, and stayed away from family, building up, and doing his job there for what he seemed as a social cause of being able to help the poor and help the medically deprived. And the work he did there was something as stories we heard later on from the public there. I've been to villages there, and there were people who used to come with garlands, and garland the entire family is saying, your Dr. Saab's son, and this is what it is. And this is what you grow up to, a big impression of somebody is so strong, so larger than life. It was one of the reasons that influenced me to become an engineer in the first place. I had a better medical score, medical academic score. My biology scores were better than my physics, chemistry, math. With a 99% on biology, it was a no-brainer that I would become a doctor, following my father's footsteps. But this aspect of my father being so larger than life, so perfect, I didn't know if I'll match that benchmark. And that also was the fact that I was always interested in engineering per se. And that's how I took up engineering as a career. So I think the first part of really providing those wings to be different was actually provided with inspiration by the family. The other part is with regards to, Jyoti, she's been a huge part of whatever I am today. And I've received unconditional support from whatever I do. And just to tell you, when an entrepreneur starts his journey or their journey, the core part is about work-life balance. So it's only about work, and life and balance can come later. That's what happens in the initial time. I got married to Jyoti in 1996. So 1995 is when the entrepreneurial journey started, with being part of a startup, right? It was not, I didn't have the hat of a founder. And then it later on came in 1996, when I married Jyoti, she was still completing the last part of her education. And I would come home at late night and leave at 6:30 in the morning. So 3.5 hours is what I had with her. And that was the core time, that we spent, if I were to say, together. And I did tell her that, give me 1.5 years and things will change. And 1.5 years later, things only got busier. And then as for 2 years, in 1999, I moved on to UK. That is where, the ecosystem per se was not 24/7 as it would happen in India. It was more 9 to 5, etc. And I did get to spend a lot more time with her, understand her in more detail. It took, 3.5 years to sort of get to that point of us really being able to sit together and communicate. But I think the core first part of what I saw as married life was a big aspect of how she really supported me in terms of giving me time, giving me space to go and achieve and do my best. And that played a big part in whatever I became on further on.
Okay. Yeah, that's sounds, it really, that resonates because the spouse plays a very important part, especially in the early struggling years, because there's always that financial, lack of security and also the time that you spend away from home. So, yeah, Jyoti deserves a lot of credit for what we are today, certainly. The way you have shared your insights and about how you are able to hone in on the fact that several people have played a role in your journey so far, that tells all of us that you're a thinking person. So I was just wondering about your leadership style and concepts. What is your leadership philosophy, and can you talk about it a little?
So when of course, the leadership principles that I have lived by is to importantly have a clear vision and being able to communicate that vision across, because you can be a leader with a lot of good thoughts. You can, but if those thoughts don't have a clear plan and action, and importantly, if you can't communicate that to your team, it's of no use. So those are two important aspects I look at. The second part was really to bring the right teams across, make sure you have the right blend of teams. But when you look at leadership style, I've really looked to adapt leadership styles as time has gone by. It's horses for courses, so to say. And adaptability is a key part of what leadership means. So there was leadership by example when I started off, to say that I need to motivate a smaller workforce to sort of do how I do things, etc., and then lead by example. Then there is the aspect of leadership by pushing teams to perform better and mentoring, etc. But importantly, as we've grown, the leadership by compassion or leadership of compassion is something that really stuck on to me. It was not about the aspect of just giving instructions, but to really help people to achieve better, to excel at what they do. And this sort of fosters a higher element of trust and credibility, both amongst customers as well as employees and all stakeholders, which means shareholders included. And this is something that I clearly followed as a path to say that leadership by compassion should come in. But importantly, compassion should not overbear in terms of how we look at effectiveness of the leadership plan. So there are some difficult times where you have to address to say that, if there are aspects of cost management, there are aspects of various other things that you need to take care, those are terms to be really executed. But I'm glad that as a leader, I've been able to implement leadership by compassion in the right measure of effectiveness, with the aspect of empathy attached to it. One clear example I remember is how we dealt with the whole COVID pandemic time, when people were unsure of how things would happen. And really having built a core team and worked with them so well, it was so easy for us to adapt a remote sort of working. People would assume that IT companies can work remotely straight off. But let me tell you that, it's not that easy. When you work remotely, there is a need for the leader and the managers, etc., all to be in sync on the vision, objectives that have to be achieved, etc. Having given that to a lot of time that I spent with the team, building it onwards, it helped a lot during the COVID pandemic. And I think that was one of the other phases that we've seen better growth post the pandemic, because the trust within the team is better. We tend to work together better now.
Okay. So what was your head count when you started, and what is it now, if I may ask?
So when we started, our head count was about 14 people the day we started, and today we are about 1950 people, close to 2000.
That's really impressive.
Our next batch of freshers that we take up should get us to the 2000 mark. But importantly, I take it from a perspective that today, as a company, Kia.ai is into. Just to tell you more about our business, we are a company that provides banking and financial services solutions. So in that comes the aspect of core banking, where we provide the entire front office, mid office, back office for a for a bank basically. And then is the aspect of RegTech, because if you've seen post 9/11, the whole focus on compliance is really high. The aspect of financial crime surveillance is a very important aspect of how we run finance in the country. It has impacted not just economies but societies as well. And so that is a software we wrote for anti-money laundering, anti-fraud, and compliance. So that's the second bit of the business. The third part is on digital solutions. So as we've seen the growth in digital India, when I took over as the MD and CEO of the company, we decided to focus on the digital banking aspect, where we look to drive transformation in banks using technology. This was in terms of driving mobile apps, online banking, the capability to what we call as omni-channel. What omni-channel stands for is that there are a common set of processes and services available, and this is rendered through the multiple channels, whether it is a mobile or a laptop or a desktop or a kiosk, etc., seamlessly to customers. So customers can then say, I have one issue. You don't need to target multiple points to say, I did call a call center, and why is it not registered on my, in the branch? I put a query on mobile banking. Why is it not showing on internet banking? So that sort of addresses that aspect of reducing customer friction. So that's the third part of our business. And the fourth part is what I drove in UK back, which is to drive services for large banks and provide bespoke services, which is to look at application development, testing, etc. From a perspective of bringing all this together, what I realized later on is that there is a need to look at modern technology, of how we adapt to the challenges that are faced in the modern ecosystem. And that's where the whole thought process of newer technology came in, which is the Web3. And I'll talk about that later on during this session as well. So Kia.ai as a business is one that we set up that works with purely on banking, but over a period of time, we've also diversified into government services. So what I say is government services, there is a lot of financial services technology within the government as well, and we are sort of aiding those. Just to highlight what we do as a plan, who we are today. Today we work with close to 600 banks in 57 countries, and this is through a network of partners. If I were to tell you the market positioning of the company, we are ranked number 1 on the IBS Global Sales League for anti-money laundering solutions. And this has been for the last 3 years. And this is a testament of, what India can deliver as innovation. There's a huge talent pool. People talk about India not being an innovation center, but I can guarantee you one of the goals that we set up when we created the company was to really say that we have to demonstrate India as one of the world-class product development companies and solutions companies across the world. And I think in some ways, in whatever contribution we are able to do that, I'm pretty glad at where we've reached and where we will aim to go for in future.
So that's really incredible. Hats off to you. You did mention that core banking is solutions are also part of what you offer. So that means your Infosys is a kind of competitor for what you'll offer?
Yes, absolutely. Due credit to Nandan Ma'am, I consider him a big role model in how he's taken about the growth of Infosys and then further on. But yeah, we do compete with the likes of Infosys or TCS or Intellect Design in India. We compete with companies, if you've heard of them, Temenos and Pfizer and FIS, etc., in outside India. And I'm glad to say we win deals against them. So
that's nice. Yes. Hats off again. So you did mention innovation, and I do know that you were part of the delegation, India's delegation to G20, on the subject of digital innovation. So can you throw a little more light on what that is about and what has been your experience in the summits that you have attended?
Yes. So I'll take a backtrack in terms of how India has been, moving across. We've all heard about the Digital India movement happening, and a lot of people can relate to it because you've seen firsthand what's happening, whether it's the aspect of unified payment interface that came up with the fact that you can have a handle through an app that you can link across to any bank account that you have, whether it's Google Pay or whether it's the bank's app itself or Amazon or PhonePe, etc. This whole transformation has come through what was a clear vision set way back in 2014-15 to say how it has to come about. So Digital India as a movement has achieved a tremendous success. And I would think that it's one of the reasons why India came out so successfully out of the COVID pandemic. While there are so many economies globally that today struggle to even come to terms with what has happened in the last 3 years, India has really been sailing forward to the next steps of that. Now, I'll probably come back to that point later, but when we look at the G20, the presidency of that India assumed this year of the G20 was something I think the government clearly saw as an opportunity to get this message across to the world of how we can be leaders as a country in terms of driving innovation and digital adoption. Because those were credible aspects that we already demonstrated in form of how, I'll give you some examples here. India had 480 million cards, debit cards issued as part of the Jandan Aadhaar movement. And this was clearly, large part of that was from, like I said, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who was working alongside this team. This thought process of 480 odd million cards in 1.5 years, if you look at how that was rolled out, I should tell you that two of the largest economies in the world together took 30 years to roll out that many cards.
Incredible.
So it was not just about the technology, but it was the sheer execution that happened. And this is a testament not just of the government, it is a testament of how clearly the rules were understood. It's a testament of how the banking system came in and responded. And it's a true testament of how the citizens of India responded to digital adoption. Now, this is something which can be a story told to the world, and there are multiple ways to say it. So in the G20, they looked at saying that they will create a Digital Innovation Alliance, the DIA. This was headed by them. It is headed by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, METI. And they have identified 6 clear areas. One is fintech. The other one is agri-tech. Then they're looking at the aspect of educational technology, edtech, health technology, health tech, creating secure digital infrastructure. And lastly, the circular economy, what you call as recycling, reuse, the whole aspect of ESG, environment, social, and governance frameworks. So the startups in these 6 sectors are being encouraged to come out and on a platform under G20 DIA, address this to the world to say how this can support sustainability, how they can provide social upliftment and helping the masses, other than just the pure aspect of technology adoption. So the DIA is an alliance where they're inviting not just startups, but also mentors and investors. So this is an ecosystem that the METI ministry wants to really achieve. How that came about is I was in touch. Initially, I have not been part of the DIA originally. But later on, as I saw these segments, it really resonated a lot with what our metaverse offering had to do. And that's how, I got in touch with METI and there was interactions. And I got the opportunity now to be going and talking about the achievements of India on what we call as the digital public goods or digital public infrastructure. And I'll just discuss that after this. But the whole part of digital public infrastructure is a very big subject that the G20 desires to drive, with India being one of the successful case studies. So what is the digital public infrastructure? When we look at, for example, Aadhaar, right? Aadhaar is something that is adopted today by 1.38 billion citizens of India, right? This is the world's largest digital ID project. But I think by far in terms of reach, it is probably the most deep reach that has happened across to rural masses. The second part is the whole part of Umang that came up as the app that provides all government services under one app. Then you have DigiLocker that stores today billions of documents under one database. you have under payments, the absolute mastermind of NPCI, the National Payment Corporation of India Limited, them coming out with the UPI as a product that supports today close to 9.78 billion transactions as of last month, per month. And within 2 years, I'm very sure that they would achieve the goal of 1 billion transactions a day. Now, where do we come into these areas? Is that we have used a lot of the digital public infrastructure to enable some of our banking solutions. So, for example, today, upwards of 20% of the national traffic of UPI is directed through or processed through our switches at the banks, which is roughly about 230 crore transactions a year, right? Similarly, if you were to look at the digital onboarding of KYC, etc., that's the e-KYC as it's what it's termed. We use a lot of the infrastructure like Aadhaar, etc., for conducting that. We offer rural banking solutions for primary agricultural credit societies, district credit cooperative banks, as well as the state cooperative banks. These are the three structures that are there in rural banking. So there, the Aadhaar enabled payment services, where you can get payments just with a fingertip. You know, this is one of the world's best innovations to say that you give a fingerprint and then you are able to get payments enabled. That happens across. Micro ATMs work across. So if you look at the cost of innovation, that is something that is spectacular of what India has achieved. And that is how, you know, being a part of this, I decided that our company needs to participate in whatever form it is possible. Either as a, we can't go in as a startup, now being a clear 2 decades plus in our existence, but we have some businesses that can qualify as a startup like the metaverse. But importantly, it is about saying that can we help put this message across to the world? Now, a very good initiative is happening in G20 DIA. 29 countries, the startups of these countries in these 6 areas are being invited to come to India in August and participate in a huge conclave of entrepreneurs, investors, mentors. And this is to showcase the fact that India is ready to sort of, you know, in the year of G20, sort of foster innovation and help this, for which the government created funding, the government has created various sponsorships, etc. And this is something that's clearly going to drive the next generation of what we see as entrepreneurial spirit within India. So it's a huge moment out of which I thought I'll add a small contribution of doing the good part and the right part to go and talk about what the digital public infrastructure of India has rendered as benefits to its 1.4 billion citizens.
Okay, so you did that in Paris last week.
Yes, so I was earlier part of the UAE delegation. That was 3 weeks ago, and this week I was, in fact, yesterday I was at Paris talking about Bharat Meta as saying that this is one of the innovations that we bring across as taking the next leap for India to be also leading the metaverse and the Web3 economy, rather than, you know, a few thoughts of what some of the leaders spoke about, saying, oh, India does not innovate. So I said, let me put this message across that we can do some things better than what some of the innovators can do. So that was my message. But I importantly wanted to put this message out through my other sessions that I held there on the benefits of DPI. DPI is not just about India. Just to tell you that when we look at the world, there are so many people that are technology deprived as countries. And when they look at technology adoption, the cost of adoption rules out the business case of adoption itself. And that is where digital public infrastructure, which India very nicely made as open source. Today, UPI is open source. Aadhaar you can use. There are multiple foundations, and I think Mr. Nandan Nilekani heads a few foundations as a non-profit organization, where a lot is being done to render digital public infrastructure. And this is all open source. This is free open source available to other countries to adopt. And what is a building business there in this, which is upcoming and up for grabs for startups and entrepreneurs to take up, is to use the digital public infrastructure to render meaningful solutions for global economies. So I think this is just the beginning of what I would call as Amrit Kal. You know, when I can tell you, I have seen firsthand these words being used of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one world, one family, one future. But when you apply digital public infrastructure, you can really see how that is going to come together, right? And these are some things I think are some of the messages that I'm trying to put across when I go as part of these delegations. I'm looking forward to 3 more countries that I will visit soon to make sure that the countries that are invited to be part of this large conclave, I can be a ambassador to the good intentions of the government and talk a little bit of more, and also discuss as an entrepreneur our benefits that we've gained, and invite entrepreneurs globally to come and participate in the India ecosystem.
Wow, interesting, very interesting. You mentioned that about 20% of the transactions are routed through your switches. Does that mean the switches of Kia.ai? I mean, as
So
an
it's a software switch.
organization?
When I say switch, it's a
Okay,
software
yeah.
switch.
Okay.
So basically, there's a component of how NPCI processes data, and they manage the core processing of UPI. But each bank needs to have a switch that can talk to the NPCI switch, along with the multiple apps that interact as the big tech apps or other apps that come in. So if you can do transactions from, let's say, if I would say it's R Mirjankar at so and so bank, to let's say Rajiv K at so and so bank, right? That transaction means it will go to NPCI and then come to the bank where I have my bank account to debit, and go to the bank that you have your bank account to credit. And those switches there at the bank end would interact with the core banking software, the risk management software, etc., and make sure it is conducted successfully. And that's one of the roles we play. Other than the fact that when you interact with the merchant also needs to have that transaction enabled, and the merchant's account has to get credited with the reconciliation to say how many transactions happened in the day. So that's the whole aspect, the whole gamut of that is something that we do.
So the bank might use a different switch and the merchant might use a different switch. Is that how it works? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, lovely. Yeah, that's the way you've linked DIA and the concept of the world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That's very interesting. That's a nice analogy. You also mentioned Bharat Metaverse, which is, I understand that your organization is developing and offering. Can you explain a little more about that?
Yeah, so I will start with explaining the concept of metaverse, of how it was construed earlier and how we see that coming forth. A couple of years ago, we spoke about metaverse. The word came in as an aspect of where you would have a virtual world where 3-dimensional objects can interact with each other. So avatars, as what they were termed, could interact with someone. Now, this was very similar to gaming that would happen. So in gaming, you would interact with 2 players coming through. You can talk to that player, and then together you can play as a team and play against someone. Now, all the actors in the gaming could be actually individual avatars, could be playing against each other or playing with each other. This was what was the gaming world that came in. But beyond that, there were discussions of saying, can this collaboration be taken forward to newer extent, to a newer level per se? And that is where the various companies started discussing the ability to do social networking. Now, Facebook then became Meta. But I would say it did become Meta from a perspective of saying that we will drive Meta in the world, or whatever other principles of that Facebook had at that time. So they became Meta. But how we see it is there is not a hardbound link to Meta to Metaverse. It is not Meta's verse. It is Metaverse is typically a subject that originally came from a novel, Snowflake, which was Snow Crash, which was a novel written where the description of Metaverse was written as that there's it was science fiction where the real people are able to communicate with the virtual people, and they had modern gadgets to communicate. And then there were the poor people who would use poorer gadgets to communicate, but they were looked down upon and things like that. That's what the novel reads. That's where the first term of metaverse came through. When I read that novel, I said, we need to first say, what was the definition of how things are looked at? And it provided me the inspiration that we could actually conduct real commerce on the metaverse. When we looked at metaverse as what was construed, the cryptocurrencies were closely linked to metaverse in that original concept of how it came out 2.5, 3 years ago. And I said that, I have my personal views that cryptocurrency is it's not going to definitely drive the future of finance, right? And we've seen that as proof across the last year or so. I'll reserve my thoughts on the criticism of cryptocurrency, but I do stand very clearly with the views of the Governor of Reserve Bank of India that we need to focus on what you call as asset-backed currencies, and that's the one way to go to protect the interests of the citizens. So when we looked at metaverse, I said, let us de-link this concept. So there is this aspect that I can have avatars talking to each other, and there are benefits of that. And we will enable what is India Stack, which is UPI and the likes of it, which is digital payment, digital ID, all of that, into a metaverse. And that is what we coined as our product called Bharat Meta.
Nice.
Bharat Meta stood for a virtual world for Bharat, but it was as a single word to say that if I were to provide an app, so to say, I'll provide a virtual world, it has to importantly resonate with the ethos of India. What is the ethos of India? It is culture, it is commerce, and importantly, it is collaboration. These are the three things that make us a strong nation. This is how we've really learned to grow forward. So I said, why not create this as a virtual world? And that was what Bharat Meta stood for. So just to tell you what an example of metaverse is. When India celebrated its 75th Independence Day, Bharat Meta had a virtual asset of the Red Fort. And in that, at 9:01 a.m., which is by protocol after the Honorable Prime Minister has hoisted the flag on the Red Fort earlier, after 9 o'clock, anybody else can hoist the flag. At 9:01, we hoisted the Indian flag as the first national flag on the metaverse.
Nice,
right?
lovely.
And how it was is that there were patriotic songs being played. As your avatar ran towards the Red Fort, you could listen to these patriotic songs. And another important part was there. How do you take this to the next level? In the Red Fort asset, you could walk to the place where Pradhan Mantri Modi ji hoists the flag, stand there and salute the flag. That was the ultimate part of, you would say, that experience of what you can provide in that small use case of a metaverse. Now, this is not just, I would say, a gimmick in terms of a gaming. How we wanted to relate to this is to say that in India, there are aspects of religion, spirituality, there are aspects of how we associate ourselves to heritage. The vast amount of, monuments that we have. There are so many places that we have in the country, but we don't know. And what we said is that the limitations of people not to know about this has also been their ability not to be able to travel there. True. Right? And the ability to get information across. So what we said is that we will create a virtual world where we are able to put all of these assets as digital assets, where people can go and have a view, but importantly relate to the aspect of culture of why that place came up to be what it is, what it stands for, and then understand a little bit more about how our culture associates to that monument or shrine, etc. So those are the typical first case of what we saw as Bharat Meta. But coming to our core business of banking, we said we will allow banks to set up virtual spaces. And this was not about a lounge where a bank will just generally say, this is my product, but to say that we will use the India Stack. So we will allow people to digitally onboard themselves. We will have interactions. And those are phases that we're clearly launching month by month now, and offer banking services. Now, a question that has been asked to me, that will that not be something similar to a mobile app or internet banking that is offered? How is this different? It's just 3D. What happens is that within the mobile banking, you have only limited tiles, and you click those tiles, and that is what the services you get. Within internet banking, it's very similar. Just the fact that you got a drop-down menu. Modern economies are being driven by flexible online product design. What I mean is that if I went and said that I want a house, a personal loan, and I said I want 20 lakhs rupees loan, on mobile banking or the website, I can just apply for a loan and get a loan at, let's say, 11%, 12%. That seems expensive to me.
Right.
So I say, can I get, the Indian thought process is, discount milega kya? Now the discount Milga Cup cannot happen on these apps because there is no emotions attached to it. And that is where you bring in artificial intelligence and the ability to collaborate. So what the metaverse is capable of doing is to bring across the aspect of an interaction with an avatar that is sufficiently educated to understand what you can offer. So you will say that, yes, you have a housing loan with us. And on top of that, you got 16 lakhs of equity that is possible to be given. And that will come to you at a 7.5% interest rate. And the remaining 4 lakhs can come as a personal loan at 11.5%. Together, the consolidated value is that so-called discount Milga value of 8.3, 8.5%. And this is a win-win for both the bank and the customer because the bank sold 2 loans. The customer got 1 loan at the rate that he wanted, right? And this is what you can offer as a customized offering on the metaverse. And this is one example I'm talking of gamifying the banking process. Of course, it takes time to convince banks of why I call it gamifying, but the fact is that you can bring processes together to deliver a better result. So that was the other part of fintech. And the other part is in terms of rural population. One of the key things we looked at is the principle for metaverse. It cannot be elitist, where you say that, I'm wearing a headset, an extended reality headset, like a virtual reality headset that you see on pictures today, and see the virtual reality in a 3D view, or augmented reality, it's what is termed. The difference in virtual reality to augmented reality is, in virtual reality, you see a closed view of an immersiveness of 120 to 360 degrees, where you can look up and down and see yourself immersed in that world. Augmented means I'm seeing you as it is, but if I wanted to wear that and say, okay, can you augment this view that I'm getting of Rajiv Ma'am? It will probably put up the name and of aspects of your profile there. So it is augmenting what I am seeing. So these are expensive headsets that come through. We've recently seen the launch of Vision Pro, and that's a exorbitant cost. But I think there are so many others who are now coming out with different chipset designs, which will come with cheaper headsets. But our concept of metaverse was it should work on rural infrastructure as well. And this is again an inspiration of how Digital India has driven its products. You look at UPI, started with smartphones-based UPI with the big tech apps. It also went to bank apps. But then you had UPI 1, 2, 3. You have UPI by SMS, that is. And you have UPI now with voice. You have UPI with the ability to conduct a transaction by SMS or missed call. So there were so many versions of UPI that came that took this to different levels of penetration digitally. So inclusion was the core element. That is the core objective we put for metaverse. So what we're doing today is, you must have heard about digital banking units that were placed in 75 districts and now has moved to about 400 plus. We said we can give an addition of a screen there where our metaverse can operate from the cloud and talk to the rural citizens in the language of their choice and explain to them with clear directions of how to use digital infrastructure. So it will say, this is your Aadhaar card, show an image of the Aadhaar card, then say, place it on so-and-so place in the kiosk. So you don't need people to man these kiosks that you put up remotely. The other point I'm really wanting to get to, which is our future roadmap, is to render government services also on this, and which would be multiple services. And this is a point I wanted to just put in terms of delineating the jargons. There is a concept of open banking that all of us can relate to. Open banking basically means that I can operate my bank account from one app with any number of banks that I have accounts with, which is what UPI is indicator.
Enabled.
Enablement, right? Now it is moved to open finance, where I say there are fintechs who can give me a loan with the product that is managed by a bank, right? So I will have the API interfaces, etc., that will provide me integration with fintech, with insurance, with wealth management, mutual funds, etc., all through this common API-based system. The third degree of what will be openness in the digital infrastructure of India will be the open economy, which will mean that the banking, fintech getting integrated to what is the ecosystem of healthcare, ecosystem of government services, ecosystem of third parties who are in the system for commerce, etc., is something that will come through. And that is where we saw a clear opportunity for Bharat Meta to play in, which is to build the open economy for India using an infrastructure that we build virtually and be able to also render rural inclusion across.
Fascinating, actually. My mind is still grappling with so many of the concepts that you shared with us. All of them are very new, very, very interesting. That kind of leads to the next question, which you might have answered briefly, but maybe you can throw more light on it. What do you see as the future of business? There's so many things. You talked about metaverse, about artificial intelligence, blockchain technology. Artificial intelligence is creating such a buzz now, and also a lot of fear in society. What are your thoughts on these? What do you think? How do you think the world is going to shape up with so many technologies and so many new things cropping up every day?
So importantly, when we look at technology, I think there has to be a clear view in terms of saying how do we adapt it for good. Now, there are two elements to it. One is first adapting it for good and the ecosystem adapting it for good. There will be the bad players, right? Which is where the governments come in for regulation. So each of these technologies, as they get adopted, have to have regulation. A simple example is, that and why the fear factor is to go away from technology is that when first calculators came in, people said people's knowledge of maths will go away. In fact, maths only got difficult in the further subjects because they said, now you have calculator, let's do complicated math. Then you brought in computers and they said, oh, jobs will go away. If you see what computers did to us as a country, per se, let's leave the world out. It created a plethora of jobs and higher level of empowerment through information. And the different eras have come through, and the internet era has really changed things. So where are we today in terms of how the future will move? The era of the internet that came in brought a concept of information being rendered by firms through what you term as, information iteration through the web. So, which means I could send an email to you and you will receive it without the intervention of anybody. This was, I'm talking of old technology, right? The emails have been there from the ages of Hotmail. And similarly, if I were to, let's say, have my own blog, somebody can access that blog without having to have an intermediary because the World Wide Web gave that. Over a period of time, the Web 2, as what it evolved, became I wouldn't say monopoly, but it got overpowered by big tech. So what happened is that I will exchange emails, but probably somebody is reading through the concepts that I put through. Like you would say that, some people talk about saying that I did speak about this or I wrote about this. Now it is coming as ads to me, right? A lot of times, I'll give you one example. There is journalists who probably give up a large part of their family life to be on site to capture some news. And when they come and publish the news, it goes through, earlier what was given on paper and now online news. But the fact is that people get access to this even without paying the firm or paying the journalist. And so this issue of imbalance came up, where technology companies would get benefit of content, but not necessarily have the compensation is given to all the rightful owners. Another part came in, which is, let's say, if I want to say that, let's take the same email example. And this is something as an example I saw in a lot of the lectures in the DIA that were told by some of the stalwarts. I would say at least one of them was 25-year-old and the others were not, many of them were not older to me. So I got to learn so much from there. It's a concept to say that if I want to sell something to you, why do I need it through an intermediary, right? So today you have big tech apps that say that we will deliver goods to you, but we will take a significant commission out of that. And guess what? The returns is upon you. Everything is upon you. Or somebody says that I've got I will make sure that a taxi come and picks you up, but I don't know anything about driving per se, right? So technology became devoid of domain expertise. That is where Web3 addresses the core need of creator economy. I'm just telling you this example to say creator economy means that the person who created it benefits first.
Okay.
Right? Creator economy also means that somebody will own the tech content. You can have the concept of intellectual property and how it is distributed. But a very important part that has come through in Web 2 as a defect in design, I would say by choice, but data privacy, is a core aspect that is troubling a lot of people as consumers today. If I took a loan from a bank, I'll get 3 offers of top-ups from everybody else 1 year down the line. But I don't need one. So this aspect of saying, look, I parted with data, but it does not mean that it has to be used, is a legislative process that is happening as a Data Privacy Act and that is being put through. But as a technology, for me to say these are my choices and I consent to only giving information to these people is something that is slowly coming up. So that came as part of what is Sehmati as account aggregator model in India, again as part of the digital public infrastructure. But technically speaking, Web3 is addressing this more seriously in a manner with the technology part as well. So the future of business will be, I think, the fact that the creator economy will be enabled. The focus on domain will be higher rather than the ability to make one person talk to another, because that will be by default. So you will have a ability to say that I can directly sell to somebody with the aspect of being able to network. So it will be a very highly interconnected economy. So let me explain interconnection there. We are going to have IoT or Internet of Things as a major player in this. Where today I have SIM cards in my mobile phones, but in 2 years' time, we would not need a SIM card because eSIMs will come in. But these SIM cards are smart chips. I can put them on a consignment and track this to say, has my consignment reached the right place? Now, whether it means the bank de-risking its trade finance transaction by saying that it has gone to the right place, and then somebody saying, okay, I'll get drone footage of that from the interconnected world to say it has reached that port where it was supposed to go, is power of information that comes to people who are running their business. Whether it is a bank funding somebody for trade finance, or whether it is someone saying that has the delivery happened, or whether it is about me selling artworks from my small artisan shop to somebody globally. That will all be enabled through what we call as the Web3 ecosystem. And the Internet of Things will enable that. 5G as such is a technology that's come in already. So what has happened is that you have what was classically 20 Mbps on your mobile phone as bandwidth has now gone to 600 Mbps, 400 to 600 Mbps. So what do you do with the technology? So if I said that Netflix movies can be downloaded now in 2 minutes, the fact is it will still take me 2 hours to watch the movie. But that's about Netflix. But you have other businesses that can be conducted far faster with this technology. And that is what will get enabled with the power of 5G and IoT together. That 5G will enable this hugely connected world, and which will allow for better control of information across, with each creator being it, without the need for a big tech or an intermediary to necessarily learn every action. Because seemingly now you would seem to wonder that, I do need a big power to sort of communicate, to sell my goods, etc. But you look at classical case, and I remember Nandan Nelenikar ma'am speaking about this, about the Open Network for Digital Commerce, ONDC.
Right. Yeah.
That's a framework that has been put for saying that a seller can put out his goods on the open network, and a buyer can choose which person they will use based on preferences. And the seller can then say, this is the person I'll use for courier, this is the person I'll use for other logistics, and get that done. Now, this is not just about, if I were to give an example, it's not just about buyer-seller. In Bangalore, there is a whole taxi business that is placed, where taxi drivers are participating as the seller on this network, and consumers are booking taxis on this network.
Fascinating.
And I should tell you, I last I heard is that more than 1 million rides have been booked on this.
Wow.
Right? Okay. Now imagine this happening through a big tech, where the taxi person was deprived of full money and said that I'm getting 30% lesser or 20% lesser or whatever it was. I'm not clear about the numbers there, I should admit. But open network means now it will empower everyone with conducting their business. And this is the true part of what the future of business will be. Future of business will be one that is highly digitally connected, empowering the core creators of the business, whether it's a taxi driver with his ability to drive the taxi, whether it is the restaurant with his ability to cook the best dishes, whether it is the bank to provide the right kind of financing with the ability to remove the risk, or whether it is the consumer who has the choice now to give consent to say where his information should be used and how he accesses services. So that would be, in my view, the future of business. It is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in and render these business models. The fact is that when big tech can be overpowered with the simplicity of technology or the power of technology, entrepreneurs can use this opportunity to come through. And that is what I would say, that this is the age for entrepreneurship to boom, not just in India but globally. And you can really compete with the best with just the simplicity of what the modern technology has to offer.
That's so very encouraging from the entrepreneur's point of view. But what is your view on this scare that AI will, you did briefly mention, you drew the comparison with computerization and how we were all afraid in those days. But AI seems to be a step beyond that. So what is your view on the fear of AI leading to large-scale job losses? Would we need something like a universal basic income? What are your thoughts on that?
I will give you my view on AI. I think when we've looked at, we've been consumers or I would say employers of AI pretty much almost 10 years ago. Because having developed solutions for anti-money laundering, we had to look through the, what anti-money laundering assumes is that, you got a list of people who are the specially designated nationals on certain lists that are put out by the Financial Action Task Force or the OFAC and various other governments, etc. And you scan through that and say, is the transaction happening with any person in that list? Now, somebody in that list could also just be a politician. It not be bad. It's not bad to be a politician, regardless of what some movies might portray or what we might assume. Some politicians are there for the right cause, but just merely being a politically exposed person, or what we call as a PEP, is not a bad thing, which is where you create the concept of false positives. So the artificial intelligence was used to look at the pattern of transactions to say this is a clean transaction. But I'll tell you, the fact is that at that time, I could not explain this to a banker to say AI is doing this very well. Because what you gave as a risk score of 4.3, hence you say this is clean, is not transparent to the person to say what is the algorithm you used. Why should I put my job on the line to say I am also regarding it as clean? So over a period of time, these algorithms have got better with the amount of data they are able to process. So AI has been useful, but one of the newer changes of how AI has come forth is the fact of saying, what is the proof of AI? What is the proof that something got better? And I think generative AI is one of the concepts, and there are many other models. So I wouldn't say ChatGPT is the only generative AI tool. There are so many other companies, and in fact, to Sam Altman's theory of saying India can't innovate, I have to definitely say that, I remember Tech Mahindra's you saying challenge accepted. It's challenge accepted from a lot of startups in India. Generative AI will be led by a lot by India also, because of our ability to process languages other than just the context. So generative AI has brought forward a very interesting concept. Today, Rajiv ma'am, I can talk about metaverse, right? I just gave us spiel on the metaverse about, let's say, 5 minutes. You can pick up a few topics of that and get the existing knowledge of what the metaverse is and give the similar speech in probably better language. So the ability to express is now democratized, right? Imagine this being the case for a genuine need in creator economy.
Right.
That I'm not saying this whole database is scanning the internet. That is, of course, not the right thing. So what is happening is the governments globally, as I would presume, will come with regulations to say, create boundaries of where AI can get into. Create boundaries of how much data they can scan and what they can know and store about people or a situation. These regulations will create the opportunity for companies to come in and build solutions that will create better artificial intelligence. But I think it's a very positive development. There is evidence of what AI can render, rather than just being in the back end of a code. So I do see a bright future for AI, but I do see the need for regulations coming into this as it progresses into other areas. Because right now, in the current version of the web, as it is available. Data is out there for people to just consume and not credit the creators of it.
Creator.
Right. So once the model of paying for the creator comes in, I think AI will be in its best stage of use.
Okay, that's interesting. But what about the impact on job losses or fears of impact on job losses?
So, like I said, I think AI will only enrich the information for people to be more empowered.
Okay, good.
As example, calculators did not affect jobs. Computers did not affect jobs. And people should not underestimate the power of a human mind. Right? A human mind's adaptability is far more superior when it comes to the long run. And I think that is where it will happen. But yeah, there is one aspect, is that the need will be for people to really work on their core strengths and get better at it. Generalists or people who just assume to do tasks may not find the right jobs. There is a need to be understanding things in more detail as you go into, let's say, technology. But let's look at the hardcore. If you had tech companies that were delivering food, there are somebody has to deliver the food to be able to enjoy the benefits. Right? Drones might do some part of it, but I can imagine millions of drones going hither and thither and what's going to happen there. So I do see the aspect that humankind will adapt very well to artificial intelligence. But with the regulations coming in, I think governments have that responsibility to make sure it goes in the right direction.
That's a very positive outlook. Cheers everyone up, I suppose. So, you did briefly talk about work-life balance, and I wonder where your energy comes from. Do you do something special, and can you also guide the would-be entrepreneurs, especially the younger ones, on how they can achieve a better work-life balance? How do you go about it, and how do you maintain your physical and mental energy? Because for an entrepreneur, that's probably the most vital, quality. The being able to maintain the focus and energy levels throughout the day after day. How do you do it?
So for one, when I preach something, it may not be all that I practice, but I do know that it has its benefits because I've used it from time to time. I think a good part of yoga does help in the morning to align the minds, to energize the minds and energize the body. So the fact is that early start to the day is always useful, right? The other part is it gives you enough time to sort of arrange or manage your day. Planning is a very important part to start a day. I would say that is where the work-life balance comes from. If you get to office without planning what you want to do, believe me, you will spend time till late night trying to plan the next day. And probably make up for what you should have achieved today. So that is a very important part to go about work-life balance, which is to plan the day and clearly set goals of what you want to achieve. There is an important part of being able to say that I can't do this. Acknowledgement of the fact that it is beyond your means or might is something that is very important. And those are times when you look at your team, you look at the right level of delegation and right level of empowerment of your team to take up those tasks. So it does not mean that you end up doing everything. You have to find a team that does that. Right? That is what makes successful companies, that what makes successful teams. And the important part is to never bring work mood home. You can bring work home, but don't bring the office mood into the house. Because your work-life balance might be thinking that, okay, I am all balanced, but the fact is that you imbalance the entire part of the family with that part, with what's happened. And this was an important part that I did, is that during the COVID pandemic, I had a few video calls with all our employees, right? I used to conduct Zoom sessions with all employees to, one, apologize to the families, to say that, there are power plugs that are there near the sofa, and these are gold dust. So our people would have taken the laptops there and taken away the power plugs. The children also had to get educated on a remote basis, right? So the stress on the ecosystem in terms of Wi-Fi connectivity. Then the pressure cooker has to go off in the kitchen. The fact that it has to go on silent or, do this between so and so time was there. So during the pandemic, I actually went and apologized to the families to say, I have brought workplace to your homes. Thank you for, giving us space there. But importantly, thank you for bearing with us. So this is something that is not right, which is to say taking the work tension back home. And lastly, I would say that when you look at looking at work-life balance, well-being is a very important part of work-life balance.
Right.
First of all, health is an important aspect. So eating the right food, eating nutritious food, and exercising well. And last point I want to say is not to exercise when you're stressed.
That's so important. Yeah.
I do that. So if I'm a wee bit stressed, regardless of what's my motivation on a bright sunny day, I will still not go and exercise. There are times when I've traveled weeks over and I've decided not to exercise through that period because I generally felt that I was overstressing the body. And so it's not necessary to meet a timetable. Well-being is not about attaching times to slots. Well-being is about attaching importance to what's the state of mind and applying that in your day as such. So those would be my tips for work-life balance per se.
That's very insightful sharings, especially about not exercising when you're stressful. That you actually do a lot of harm to yourself.
Absolutely.
And also, you're reaching out to your workforce during COVID and thanking them and apologizing is a demonstration of real empathy. That again is commendable. Yeah. So it's been a very long, a very, very interesting session. I could probably spend easily another hour or two asking you questions, but I need to ask at least one final question before we throw it open, through the questions session open to others. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs, or maybe specifically aspiring software entrepreneurs, or also entrepreneurs of other fields, because the ingredients for success are common to all endeavors. So what would your advice be?
One important part is to have a clear vision of what you want to achieve and make sure that you have a passion for that vision, because sometimes you clearly put a vision that's too far away and you may not have the passion for that. So that's necessary to really bind those two and put that together. The other core part is to make sure that anything that you do as such is something that is high integrity, and importantly, you are able to say that it is solving a problem. A lot of times somebody would create a solution. It is a solution for which there is no problem. So why bring that? I typically take, for example, the extent of how cryptocurrency went through. Bitcoin was one aspect. You could, sort of take it and say, okay, it does meet some goals. But then this host of coins that came through, I can honestly tell you that was probably more of a no use case. Just saying, okay, Bitcoin succeeded, so we will set up multiple things. So it doesn't solve a problem. A simple example I can tell you that was the craze in India, that STD booths. So I remember in my college life, there were STD booths. I could go and make a phone call because there were 4 STD booths and I could reach out there and get there. But then as I graduated through and came through, I could find a STD booth in every 50 meters. Right? So when the mobile handsets came in, there was a big disruption that happened in that business. So it does not mean, so what is the problem solution? People need to make phone calls, but people don't need to make phone calls in every 50 meters. It has to have a distribution. So make sure that you're getting into an area that you're going to also be able to scale as business. Another very important part that I personally take forward, and I'm not sure that some other entrepreneurs believe it. I do believe that the business has to be profitable. So that has to be a core extent. You cannot run thousands of crores of losses just because you've got investors that support it. It has to be a business that's sustainable, because that is what is the long-term value that you can render as entrepreneurs. I can have an idea that doesn't pay for itself. And honestly, I don't want to make others pay for what I thought is ideation. So that's one core other area. Important part is to really know your business well, which is to say that you know the markets, you know what are the advantages, you know your strengths, you know what is competition, clear set on pricing and how you want to go about it. That's a thing that you need to jot down very clearly. And last part I would say is to have a continuous learning. There is no business that has learned. Every business has to adopt, and there's a continuous innovation, because you have so many factors, either of the consumer or the competition or of, let's say, various constraints that come in through the ecosystem, like recession or things like that. And this part is a continuous learning for entrepreneurs. Never give up on learning. and keep continuously innovating to make sure you adapt to what is the future.
Lovely. Has there at any point have you gone through a phase where you felt maybe I should quit at this point? What was your lowest point? And again, on the other hand, was there a turning point which led to huge growth, or has it been a steady kind of evolution for you?
No, I would be lying if I said there were points that I never had problems as such. There are various points where, I once lost a large deal because the customer felt we were larger than life. We were perfect for them. We were rendering so wonderfully. But we were a 125 people company. They needed 4,000 people on that job. They shortlisted us, and then they realized that our centers were smaller than the gardens of certain of the larger players or the parking lots.
Okay.
And it did tell me, oh, we're doing so well. How can I scale to that level? The fact is I had a few small customers and then I get a real big one. I can't get there. But we've never given up. We've really said, how do we adapt? And we built a niche for ourselves to say that we will target whom we can service. And that was one motivation. So that's happened. There are areas where, sometimes mistakes do happen when you conduct your business. Repercussions are there in, let's say, media repercussions may be there in the ecosystem, because when you operate in an industry, everybody knows who you are and what you do. So there are ways to really come back and do something so spectacular and with excellence that people appreciate the way you fought back and you resolve the problem. So that is something which I've always looked forward to do. Somehow I've got this motivation, like I said, support from the team. I'm really blessed with a very good management team at Kia.ai. This is a team that I've built over the last 14, 15 years working together. And they support me a lot in terms of how we jointly achieve the success. Like I said, support from family is very, very important. And that has really been forthcoming at every point. It's not just, a family is just not, like I said, it's not just mother, father, and wife and son. It is far much more, because what you are as a person is something that, is a reflection of how people together come about and create that impression. So for me, family is not just a nuclear sort of small unit. It's an entire big unit. And like I always say that, being a Bhanap does give you that privilege to really think of family as one united team.
So very true. So it's been a wonderful session. And I think I should put a curb on my own instinct to ask more and more questions. And I will, throw the floor open to my fellow panelists and request them to pose their questions, whatever they would like to have you answer. Can you all please go ahead? Maybe Rajan ma'am, Gopi ma'am, whoever, Mahesh ma'am.
Yeah, Rajesh, I have a question. I mean, rather a suggestion. You have enriched our knowledge so much, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, metaverse technology. And if your imagination goes wild, you can apply it for so many applications. I mean, I was just thinking, when you walk around on the linking road here in Bandra, to see so many hawkers on the road. And could you have a sort of a virtual a virtual platform where the hawkers interact and sell rather than coming to the footpath? I mean, it's just a wild idea, and I think you can build many more such applications. So how, suppose the younger lot, they identify such needs and all that, and they try to form a startup.
Yes.
How could you join, help KSA in facilitating this role? And we could really serve the purpose of CSN of developing Bhanap startups coming up in the near future. And based on what you said, you started with the banking industry. And I think you're still in the fintech, but the applications are, I think, immense. So as KSA, I don't know how our managing committee will view. We should form a small group to identify such applications and see how it could be taken forward to build startups, Bhanap startups in the field.
Absolutely. I think, like you mentioned, yes, I'm happy to play any role in terms of really discussing with startups on how modern technology like metaverse or AI or Web3 can come together to help the ecosystem as startups per se. But importantly, like the hawkers, for example, are there because they don't afford the huge rents on Bandra linking road. That's the cheapest place they could find. In fact, the most affordable place they could find. The second point is that some of those goods are probably stitched by them or others, which they can't find a market for. So they come as the marketer for that. And the technology is enabled with open network, for example, ONDC, and come upon the ONDC network to come as artisan or micro seller, MSME sector, and start selling goods directly. Now, where does the metaverse come in place is to provide the visual impact, to say, I'll put the same dress on your avatar and show you how it looks, and get a feel of that. The ability to interact and ask questions, to say, can I get this customization done, etc. So there are, like I said, infinite aspects that you can build, but you need to evaluate the scale, because sometimes you get an idea, you got to find who's the consumer and where will you find the consumer also. Like the hawker found the people at Linking Road. How do people find you is an important part of the startup, to say, how do you create that identity for yourself and the foundation. But I think it's a good start to really have an ecosystem of mentors to discuss with startups of how they want to look at how technology is perceived and what applications can be there. And I'll be happy to play any role in that.
My point is, I'm just telling your imagination can go wild and see how feasible it could be. And we
absolutely
start a group. So
there was in mid of July, we are having a big launch of one of the use cases of the metaverse. And that is going to be something that I see as game changing. Again, in September, we've targeted another industry group that will come up. So, we do have to have a lot of education done in terms of new technology, because literacy is important aspect for the consumer. And that's a key thing to achieve for a successful business.
Do any of our other panelists have any questions? Because after you all finish, I would like to ask the questions that we have received on other channels.
Yeah, I would like to ask some question to Rajesh. Basically, you mentioned this money laundering applications, and is it a part of forensic or is it an ongoing process? And number one, and number two is blockchain technology anywhere used in any of this work which you do?
Yes, good question. I think it's anti-money laundering technology as such. So anti-money laundering solutions are ones that really have multiple steps to it. So one is the detection of it. Then is the fact that you get an external scenario on which you want to do forensics on the data. So one, you detect the crime straight off. Second thing is it is already layered, so you don't detect it. But there is something happening in the external situation. So you push that situation here and find out who are the potential perpetrators. It is possible to get through AI the aspect of forensics. And the third element is the case management, to say how do you store those records. So as multiple small violations can also result in a big crime. So how that adds up also is an important part. So that's what the whole technology is all about. And addressing the point of blockchain, yes, blockchain does give credence to the fact that the storage of a particular profile can be done using blockchain, which the whole digital identity part, and there are various other aspects that you can have on blockchain technology. But I largely feel that anti-money laundering as a whole solution, blockchain is a great solution for controlling life cycle and identity. But to store as the entire data, I would more take it as a work of data analytics more than blockchain.
So may I then move on to, relaying the questions that we have received? If there's no one else, I will. The first one, Rajesh, is from Niraj Hattandi, and I just read out. Hello, Rajesh, sir. How do you see AIs like ChatGPT affect global job markets? Do you expect replacement of traditional jobs with more tech AI-centric jobs? Thanks. You have actually already addressed this, but you might want to add more. Yeah.
So at this point, I want to say is that, like I said, ChatGPT is, of course, something that seems to be disrupting. That's a fear. But I would say that with the right regulations that need to come in place to make this acceptable. I want to tell you one thing, that ChatGPT is available today as a model that can run on an internal database also. So it's not necessarily an output. So which means that like I said, the concept of democratizing expression in better language, it is just for your knowledge, is that it is also termed as the transformer model, the algorithm that is used. So these are definitely useful in terms of empowering the people who are using it. So I wouldn't say it necessarily would cause job losses, but if somebody said their only job was to type, then I do see a fear that that job may be at risk, because typing is something that is not necessary now. The output is coming out automatically. So that's why I said that enriching the job means that people have to be, because one important part is to be employable to be employed, which is where I would say that skills development is an important aspect to how the future job market will relate to.
So true. Yeah. Kedar Nadkarni conveys his thanks for being the guest today and sharing so much of your knowledge. Hemant Malapur says, great to know about Kia's accomplishments. And Amar has a question. What are your views on disintermediation in financial services on a mass scale? Example, when will a borrower be able to have lenders bid for his loan needs on a platform like ONDC? A daily wage earner receiving bids for his relatively meager savings?
I think it's not far off. If you were to look at the technology, ONDC has already got that network in place. There are a lot of participating firms as well. India already has something called Open Credit Enablement Network, the OCEN, where people wanting a loan can place this and you get the loans enabled. And I know that there are targets for banks to lend to people on OCEN. If you heard about the Mudra scheme, women empowerment, you get loans sanctioned in a matter of hours, and not small loans. It's 2 lakh to 5 lakh, etc. And I'm glad that we support a lot of the back office part of also Mudra. And this is something that is clearly new initiatives that will already come in place. But to answer your question on the specific update, there will be marketplaces created, and there will be specialist marketplaces created. I want to also say that probably Bharat Meta would play a role in that at some point, which will be that consumers will be able to participate in the marketplace and say, I want a loan. And not necessarily get 50 phone calls on their mobile numbers, because the data privacy will mean that it is an anonymous bid. And then based on what you want as the choice of your financer, you supply the KYC there through consent, through Sahmati, and then get the loan sanctioned. So this is something that is clearly, I would say, in the vision of now until a year's time or maximum 2 years.
Wow. Okay. Right. And would that also enable data sharing without revealing the identity of the loan seeker?
No, absolutely. I think the first is to aspect when you have anonymous digital ID, which is to say that you establish the need and then say, is somebody meeting that requirement? And the one part is people saying, yes, we're interested. Second stage is to say, who are we offering this loan to? Because the credit scoring and aspect of risk is a very important element to any underwriter.
True.
Right? Even if it's a fintech who's very keen to do business, he still has to supply data to the underwriter. So that part will come in where you need to give your ID. But Sahmati gives you the consent to say, so-and-so ID from so-and-so place can be given to the person. And it's something that is based on the customer's choice. So it does not go to 50 people. You are choosing whom your identity has to go to. Okay. Now, typically how you could do that, I'm just leaving this to imagination. Let's say on a marketplace, you got interest rates. And if your choice was of the lowest interest, then you provide identity to the person who's offering lowest interest.
Right.
So that's, of course, going to be there. And a bit of the regulation will be there that the participants on the marketplace will be regulated entities. Hopefully. Because you had this whole issue of the apps from foreign countries.
Chinese apps. Yeah.
Have stolen data. And that is not something clearly desirable, because we've seen people who are at the receiving end of this. And I can tell you it is absolutely very disturbing on the minds of people of how they are pestered. So the government is taking a very, I would call it responsible regulation. And you know, one thing we should know is the Reserve Bank of India has been regulating so effectively. It was no surprise that the Reserve Bank of India governor got ranked as the best governor this year. Another thing I should also share, I forgot to share this, is that India was declared as the country of the year of 2022 at Viva Tech in Paris.
Oh, wow. That's really amazing. Yeah.
And I want to just also mention Maurice Levy, who's the founder of Vivatech. He made a statement which I read somewhere. He said, so long it was incredible India, but now it is a credible India. So this is what the global economy thinks about and the market thinks about India today.
That's a powerful upgradation. Yeah, lovely. And the next one is from Hemant Malapur. In your entrepreneurship journey, what are some of the risks you took that help you go to the next level? Do you feel in Indian society the appetite to take risks is less in terms of capital investment? Does our society need to, and how can our society outgrow this?
So I think it's a very good question. It is a challenge faced by every entrepreneur. The risk that a person takes is not necessarily on just the time. I think purely when somebody is putting their mind to a particular cause of having entrepreneurship, they have to have a clear vision to say where do they also will they find the sources. You need to inspire somebody to invest in you. So that is an important element for you to build that in the back end and not just have a startup and then say, let me now start the works later on of finding the funds. So I would say put intelligence before the risk, get the whole act together. But the ecosystem has changed a lot. Indian ecosystem is now attracting a lot of venture capital funds from overseas, from within India. There are a host of family offices that have come up with funding options. There are a host of agencies that have come with fund of funds that render to startups. And most importantly, I think the government of India has created the initiative of having startup funds. So if you have a great idea that resonates with the aspect of social upliftment of the masses, about creating change and innovation, you would get the support from the right quarters. And there is no limit to funding that you would get. It's purely proof that you've seen that people with even limited use cases have got billions of dollars. That's not just a matter of luck or chance. It is really a matter of execution.
Right. The next one is a compliment, really. It's not a question. Scintillating talk. Really, I benefited by Mulaqat with respected Rajesh Mirjankar. This is from Dr. N.K. Nayak, Kumta, Karnataka.
Thank you.
The next one is from Kiran Kopikar. Will artificial intelligence likely to affect software industry? Now, this is industry-specific question.
Yeah. So there are aspects that somebody said that artificial intelligence will help create code. I don't see the time where, we've looked through this. We've had no-code platforms, low-code platforms. Earlier, there was the whole aspect that when people said that, front ends will be created on its own on the fly, then coders will lose their jobs. I think it's for whoever thinks that they can have a software that can get rid of software programmers, they're sadly mistaken. There is a huge case for domain expertise to be there. I would just think that, be motivated enough to know that AI or any other revolution will not take away jobs. Software programmers will have their worth if they understand the domain very well. So keep that focus on that. And if you are user-centric in terms of customer focus, understanding the business of the customer, very few technologies can surpass you in terms of doing it better.
Okay, the next one is from Sudhir Kopikar. Great vision about future India, we learnt now. How can we use technology to help Modi to win election is a subject technicians should assure now. I give you the liberty to pass this one since it is slightly political. You can decide.
I'll give it a pass, but I should tell you that it is no coincidence that we've had the golden era of what we define from the last 6 to 8 years, but also the fact that we look forward to the next 25 years to celebrate the centenary of India's democracy and freedom, with a point of really not being a superpower by just emphasis of power on somebody. It will not be the power of armies, but it will be the power of knowledge and the pure power of intent of the citizens of India that will make the Amrit Kal come true. So I would leave it to anybody's knowledge to say, to wisdom to say how to go about this. But I do feel there is a definite impetus on innovation that has come through in the recent past, and I truly trust that it should continue.
Very well expressed. The next one is a compliment again from Deepa Narkani. Very inspiring interview for the youth today. truly. Amarnath Saudnan has a question. Your view on financial disintermediation and how banks should prepare for it.
So I think this was discussed earlier, but banks,
Yeah.
I'll answer the question on how banks should prepare for it. You know, there are, we should realize that when fintechs were spoken about 6 to 8 years ago, and when the first mobile wallets were talked about, people said banks will go bankrupt. And people have written obituaries for banks since the last 2 decades. Some wise person made a statement that there will be, banking, but I don't know about banks, right? And I can tell you one thing, that there are typical elements of a business that make it a successful one. The key element that a bank enjoys today is the trust of its customers, right?
Very
There may be the few bad ones that are there, but you look at the majority of the banking, we are trusting it by putting our life savings into it, and we aren't very disappointed when we look at a credible firm. Now, would you trust a technology as an app to then take care of the whole thing? No. So I do believe that regardless of how technology comes, or regardless of how we then sort of have multiple layers of DeFi and various other elements, the bank is not just an intermediary of funds and risk or information. The bank is a custodian of trust, and that will continue to remain. So I would think that banking as bankers does have a rich future. Banks will have a clear role to play in underwriting risk. Importantly, when you look at conducting finance and commerce, conducting that through a regulated entity gives you the element to foster trust and credibility and run that business successfully. Imagine you trusting today a cryptocurrency or just an app. You can imagine where your net worth would be in terms of how you ran that business. Yes, there are people who made fortunes, but that's not a business model. That is an opportunity or a risk. It's not a model. So I think for a successful business to run, for successful finance to run in future, banks will continue to play an important role. There are people who also said that with central bank digital currency coming through, what is the role of a bank? Because today I can have money on my wallet and that's endorsed by Reserve Bank of India. So I have a bank. The fact is that you're having that on your wallet, but the aspect of savings and being able to conduct business, etc., is going to happen through the bank. Today, we might say 80% of transactions or 95% of transactions are retail transactions that happen on UPI, etc. But the fact is, the country is also run with the fact that there are large conglomerates, there are firms that run business banking through the effectiveness of what are regulations already in place. It's not all business happens in a second of transaction from a person to person transfer. So I think banking is there to stay, and it will only get better with better technology.
It's very well analyzed and expressed. Just to remind our viewers and to share with you, Amar Mam is now a director on SVC board, recent entrant to the board in the last elections. Congratulations to him.
Congratulations.
The next one is from Mahesh Nileshwar. Thank you for a great presentations. Any plans to visit Toronto? Mahesh Mam is based in Toronto and does a lot of work there in the social arena.
So we do have a business in Toronto, and I will of course make sure that I do connect with him if I happen to be in Toronto.
Yeah, you promised to make better connects in the community. One of your goals, yes, haven't you, at the beginning of the interview? Yeah. The next one also from Mahesh Nileshwar. Can you tell us more or discuss later about how these technologies can help not-for-profits? Like I said, he does a lot of work in the social arena. So that's where this question is coming from.
Just one second. I'm just addressing. Sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Asked by Mahesh Nileshwar. Can you tell us more or discuss later about how these technologies can help not-for-profits?
Yeah.
That's the NGOs. Yeah.
Yes. So I think NGOs face two challenges today. One will be ability to raise funds and put across their vision across, and also the proof of what is social impact. So technology.
Have we lost?
I think so.
Yeah, Rahulji, have we lost Rajesh just now? Rahulji? Okay, we'll wait. Yeah. For our audience viewers, Rajesh Ma'am will log in a minute max. Thanks for your patience and for waiting.
Rajiv,
Yeah.
be back.
Rajesh is back.
Okay.
Okay, good to have you back. You can hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I'm audible.
Yes, you are very much. I'll be a little brief in the rest.
Yeah.
Kedar Nadkarni, he's a software developer for a fintech company in Toronto. They are using Temenos, and he says he shares that there is a good scope for a product in a similar area, which
Yes.
works better than Temenos. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sharing that with you.
Thank you.
And he also wants to. He says he and his wife are working on a SaaS product. So can you please suggest any government, non-government body for networking and raising funds? So what I would suggest is maybe we can share your number with Kedar.
I can share my
Nadkarni.
email and I will put him in touch with the startup India folks.
Yeah, great. Kavita Nadkarni says, great interview and so much knowledgeable for the youth. This is the future.
Thank you, Vaidi.
Parshad. Oh, okay, right. Kundapur Parshad wants to know, can banking be a continuous process along with the growth of the progress of the country? You've already answered that. The future is great. Kishore Masurkar Mam, excellent Mulaqat. Rajesh, you're a true role model for Amchi entrepreneurs. I feel sorry that I couldn't join as I'm out of town, like I'd conveyed to you at the beginning.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
Yeah, so that brings us to the end of the questions posed on, all the other YouTube and other things. It's been, for me personally, it's been a really broadening of the horizon, if I could use that phrase. So many new concepts and so many things that I'm struggling to really understand, but very, very interesting. Thank you so much, Rajesh. Very, very
Thank you.
inspiring and illuminating talk.
Thank you,
I
Rajesh.
would now hand over the session to Gopi Ma'am to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rajiv ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh ma'am. It was really a very fascinating mulaqat. One of the very rare mulaqats that I have attended, in which I think you came with a time machine and took us some few years ahead, and we could literally see how we will, transact, how we will do business, how we will, what kind of modern, resources that we have, we are going to put into place, in a few years from now. And that was really a fascinating, and the amount of depth and the variety of applications that you spoke about was really it was difficult to grasp for some time for some of us, but it was really fascinating. It was really a truly experience, a very nice talk. Apart from all this, it was really amazing to know about your journey, your professional achievements, and I think it's really phenomenal to know that your team has grown, and we wish your team to be Kia.ai to be a very big player, and I'm sure you will achieve that all through your journey. And I also like to thank all those who attended today and made this really good success. Let me begin with Mahesh ma'am. Mahesh ma'am for introducing KSA and all the activities of KSA. I would like to thank Uma Trasi Pachi for the Sabha Pratana to begin with. Gautam Amladi ma'am for introducing the CSN activities. Rajan Kalyanpur ma'am for introducing the guest today. And Rajiv Kalyanpur ma'am for so beautifully bringing out all the aspects by asking some very relevant and important questions to Rajesh Mirjankar ma'am. And definitely followed by a series of questions. I think we broke the record number of questions asked from the audience. We never had so many questions before. So I think it's a good trend. Let's hope we have more questions, and that shows how attentive and how interested our audience was in asking and participating today's Mulaqat. I would also like to thank Rajesh Mirjankar ma'am for taking out time and so elaborately explaining everything to us. I would also like to thank Rahul Jain and the entire technical support team, who's always there with us to conduct such a complex operation. And we are going live, YouTube, everywhere. And I would like to also thank KSA President Praveen Katle ma'am, Vice President Kishore Masurkar ma'am, and the entire managing committee of KSA for having this CSN activities and putting it on the fast forward. I would like to thank all the CSN team, including task force members, and I would also like to thank all of us who have attended today again for making this a great success. Thank you all.
And thanks to you, Gopi ma'am, for a very comprehensive vote of thanks in which you summed up so beautifully what Rajesh offered to us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would like to now hand over to Gautam ma'am.
Yeah.
I just shared this contact details and the website, and this will stay on till the prarthana is over and we end the meeting. So anybody contact note down discuss now.
Why discuss?
Note down contact karati. This 982-100 is my number. So if anybody wants to directly get in touch and know more about CSN, welcome anytime.
Photo
Sorry?
Photo kadiyada. That will be faster.
प्रार्थना करते सभा समाप्त। नंदन्तु साधका सर्वे नश्यन्तु विदूषकाः अवस्था शाम्भवी मेस्तु प्रसन्नोऽस्तु गुरु सदा। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखमाप्नुयात्। ओम शांति शांति शांति। जय श्री